Denise Ryan,
Present.
Catherine Hennessy,
Here.
Eddie Matthews,
Here.
Michelle Bowden-Henninger,
Here.
Dan Caruso,
He's coming.
Dan, Earl Gary. Okay. There's at least 5 of us here. Hopefully the others are joining shortly. I guess I'll open up the floor for discussion. We only have the one item on the agenda to talk about reopening.
Mr. Mayor, if it pleases the committee, can I give a quick update on our testing? We are going to be getting our Binax testing kits. We've received some, and a committee member asked me to update the committee at the beginning of this meeting, if that's okay with you.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So as you know, we did apply and did receive consideration from the state to receive the Binax testing kits. And what these are for symptomatic students and staff. And we received 4,000 kits to be able to use. What we have to do next is we do have to amend one of our policies so that way we can share information about the testing that we're going to do with parents and with the Board of Health. So I've asked Ms. Hennessy if she doesn't mind if she can assist me in getting a policy rewritten for the 12th so we can ask the committee to act upon it. And it's a minor change to a policy that we did ask our legal team to review just to make sure that we're following all of the right protocols when it comes to the testing. Because we do need to have parent permission, but we also have to have a way to send out the permission slips to all of the parents from a third party. So we will be asking for a slight change to one of our policies to amend that. And after we do that, we feel very confident that we will be ready to start using these tests. Again, these are only for symptomatic students and staff. It's not a testing program for asymptomatic folks. So it's not like a pooled testing and it's not a random testing. It's strictly for folks who are showing symptoms. And it is a quick test. It's a 15-minute turnaround. And the advisement is after you take the test, even if it's positive or negative, that you follow up with a PCR test. The good thing for us is that if we do have a positive result, it does allow us to act quickly to be able to put our protocols in place if we have to quarantine a classroom or make any decisions. And this is a much faster turnaround than the current testing that we're getting. We did look at, I did send this over to the Board of Health, to Mr. Garside. He shared it with Dr. Tennyson. And we got some very good feedback from the doctor about this test and that it has a high rate. I think he said it was over 95% valid, which is fantastic. So we're looking forward to having that. I just wanted to lay out the next steps on this just so we were all clear that on Tuesday for the next school committee meeting, I'll be bringing forward a policy that I will ask you to act on that night. It's a policy that we recently updated, but it's a minor change that our legal counsel is supporting to make sure that we can share information with third parties to be able to get the consent forms out in a timely manner. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate you letting me update the committee.
Ms. Bowden-Henninger.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron, so in terms of the permission, is the plan to send the permission out and have everybody sign it in advance so that you'll have it on file should you need to test somebody, or do you have them sign it at the time?
It would be in advance. So what we're working with a third party, much like everyone else who's doing this similar testing. And that's why we need to change our policy so that way we're able to send out the information to the third party so they can reach out via email to the parents so they can sign off on the testing.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Hennessy.
Thank you. So I just wanted to make sure that you all were aware. So Mr. Bergeron did contact me right during the holiday time period. We had a quick discussion. I'm going to be, since we really would not have necessarily time to get together a full policy subcommittee meeting in time to put it together, I'm going to go ahead and work with Mr. Bergeron. We'll pull some language together so that we can get something out to you all early, so you'd have it with or ahead of the packet, and time to review any of the language in preparation, so we would be able to ask for, I can't even say it, change of the rules, and be able to vote on next Tuesday evening on this policy, so that we would not be working against our normal policies to allow this to happen, okay?
Good.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Anyone else? Any comment? I just want to recognize that Mr. Caruso and Mr. Gary are with us, so we have a full committee at this point. So, other comments, questions, concerns, motions? Mrs. Matthews.
So I want to thank everybody again for having this meeting tonight. I guess I want to say that, first of all, Happy New Year to everybody. I hope everybody had a relaxing couple weeks off. But I think my initial goal in having this conversation tonight was because, as we anticipated, as the mayor actually had suggested back before Thanksgiving, a rise in number of cases, and in hopes of bringing the students back hybrid next week, the 11th. In looking at prior data, our worst number of cases, and either the mayor or the superintendent correct me, it was the Friday 2 weeks after Thanksgiving. And if we put that Friday 2 weeks after New Year's Day, that's the 15th of January, which would be after our initial return date of the 11th. I would like to propose that we push that to the 19th instead of the 11th, the 19th being the Tuesday because the Monday is Martin Luther King Day. And I believe the superintendent would suggest that it be cohort B on that return to even it back out again. But anybody who may have contracted or the possibility and may have been tested either would have a better probability of being diagnosed prior to the 19th rather than in the middle of the 11th. There may be some kids who can't return because they've been diagnosed or are quarantining. But I think the 19th gives us a better layout. The numbers are not good. We know that. But I think the most important place for the kids to be is in school. But I still think that we need to err on the side of cautiousness for at least one more week. So.
Tennessee.
Thank you very much. I agree wholeheartedly with you, Mrs. Matthews. I think in consideration of the numbers where we were previously, and obviously our active cases currently where we're, I believe, over 300 at this point. You know, I'm not expecting that we're going to be getting down to zero anytime soon. But I think that reasonable caution, especially knowing that, you know, there were high probability of gatherings taking place, not only from, say, Christmas time on through New Year's. I think it gives us a better ability if we pushed out the consideration towards the 19th rather than moving forward into the hybrid status as of the 11th. And I do agree with the idea of starting with the cohort as they need to get the time into school quickly. So I'm in support of that consideration of not moving forward on the 11th and having a discussion at our next meeting relative towards hopefully the 19th. Thank you.
Ms. Barry, do you have some input on that?
Yes, and
I'm kind of part of the rules a little bit because I want some input from you, obviously.
Thank you very much. And I know this meeting is specifically about having the 3 through 12 that are remote right now, but we're talking about metrics or the number of cases in these 2 weeks post-holiday that are occurring. But I'd like to know, what about the pre-K through 2 kids and staff that are currently in school? Are we going to also think about also?
There. But I think the gist of it is the students we currently have in school. What are the thoughts of? We have 3 groups in there now, totaling about 1,500 students. Committee members have any thoughts on that? I think that has been working pretty well. There's obviously a need for these students to be in school, but if we were talking about these numbers back in September, we would have just assumed we're never going back. But just a frustrating time for everybody. No one, the right decision. I don't know if anyone's making the correct decision all the way through, but we're sure trying and using all the information we have. There's no black and white metrics on this. It evolves with all the variables that happen every day, but I'll listen for additional. Out of the chat, Mrs. Bowden-Hedinger.
Thank you. Mr. Bergeron, can you give us an idea of what our status is in the district? How many do we have classes right now that are quarantined? I mean, we were just coming off break, so everyone that's supposed to be in should be in, correct?
Right now we have just about 22 students that are COVID positive across the district, and it's split pretty much 50-50 among secondary and elementary. So there's 11 students at secondary, 11 students at the elementary level. We had only had 1 classroom that I believe the notification went out on Christmas Eve from the Wickham School, but they were due back as of, I believe, today. So we don't currently have quarantines. However, we do have staff and students in isolation from close contacts of family members.
You know what I found interesting when I was talking today to the superintendent and said, okay, when we start talking about we're quarantining 1 class a week or 2 classes a week, I was curious about Hildreth School because we basically have a full school over there for the most part, between the boys club and our students that are using our daycare program. We have a full building over there, and Mike, can you just go over those? They make you feel a little better when you hear this.
Yeah, Ed, since we've opened that ability to have that daycare option, and remote learning extension pod is what we have to call it by the state, we have not had to quarantine any of the classrooms that the MPS is running, and we have had to quarantine 1 classroom that the Boys and Girls Club is running. But in terms of the amount of days that we've been through, to not have to have quarantined any classrooms is quite an accomplishment, and obviously we're thrilled with that. And to Ms. Barry's point, I do appreciate her bringing up the kids who are currently in school, and I think there is a distinction between the classroom types, and a lot of the classrooms that we currently have in school are basically self-contained in some ways. So if the classroom is contained, when we quarantine, the students and the staff go together. whereas many of the classrooms at the secondary level, for example, are team-based. So when we're quarantining, it's multiple staff and multiple students that are moving out. So we have had what I would say is more success with the current population of students we have in, although we have had to quarantine many classrooms at the height of it. So when what Ms. Matthews was saying was about December 11th, in that time frame, was just about the height of the cases that we had from the post-Thanksgiving break. We had still 90% of our PK through 2 classrooms in session. So yes, we did have 10% of those classrooms on quarantine, and that was pretty much the height of our quarantining numbers throughout the fall. So I would be a strong advocate to keep our current classes that are in session right now today, keep them in through this period, as these were the priority groups that we established in August that absolutely need in-person instruction to be successful in school.
Other members, Ms. Tennessee.
Thank you very much. The other thing that did come to mind for me in that consideration of Ms. Berry's point is that New Year's Eve holiday, if you will, tends to be something where I feel like it often affects older teens and college kids and such, as opposed to very young grouping, because the younger kids are normally, my hope, would be with their family. And so part of where my head was is the hope would be that this age group, while they may stay up to see in the new year, my hope would be that the likelihood that they would be out of their home, immediate home situation would be less from a percentage point, and that is much more of a gut reaction rather than overall data. But that would be my hope, is that more of that age group would hopefully be within their home situation, which would hopefully be within their pod. So obviously there's no set on that, but that's kind of where my head was. I do understand the concerns about coming in after the holiday time period, but that's where my head was kind of falling at this point.
They may not see you.
Question.
I had the same question.
Barry, you have something to add?
I was just wondering if there would be consideration given to maybe a staggered return to school, rather than all of 3 through 12 coming back all at the same time, just to see where those numbers go. I don't know if there's time for that type of planning, but I think there's a lot of anxiety with just having, this one date on the calendar where you have all grades 3 through 12 returning, when there is no set timeline for any of this. Everything really is up in the air. You make a decision, but the next day it's going to change. It could change. So I didn't know if that was something that could be considered for planning. I know you could say, well, let's have the 3rd grade come back, and then, maybe a class from the high school, but all the grades are important to come back at some point. But is it in the best interest of the school system to, we have the pre-K through 2 along with the EL and 2s in school, but then to add just the rest of the 3 through 12 all at one time, would it be worthwhile looking into doing some type of staggered start for the different grade levels or different schools? I just wanted to throw that out there. It was just something I had thought of.
Mr. Superintendent, I don't know how that would work. I think if we were talking about staggering, I would probably shoot for the 11th instead of moving out to the 19th to get students back. If we're going to stagger it, bring in smaller numbers on a slow basis, I don't know. I'm not sure I had put any thought into that. Any thoughts from the superintendent?
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. There was one of the school district that I had seen recently that did do a staggered opening. So they brought back their elementary students today on the 4th, and they were bringing back their secondary students on the 11th. So if looking at a staggered schedule, The only thing I would recommend is that we keep the cohorts together. And what I mean by that is I wouldn't want to stagger the kids so that way the secondary and the elementary ended up on a different cohort schedule. That would be difficult for parents who rely upon their students to provide after-school care. So if we were going to look at some type of staggered opening, if that was the need, I would just request that we do it in a way that we keep the cohorts together all the way through the system. So the B cohort needs to remain the B cohort.
Ms. Boninger.
Thank you. Ms. Berry, I'm curious, I got the sense from the way you were asking your question that the purpose of your question would be to have less people in the building. And if we did elementary versus secondary, that's not going to meet the need that you are expressing, correct?
Correct. I'm coming from the teacher viewpoint, representation of roughly 470 members, some who have been in school pretty much since day one, and trying to be the voice for the anxiety that is being felt out there, especially, the pre-K through 2 teachers and EL teachers who have been in school every day, doing their job, but also in talking about these post-holiday surges, they remain in the buildings, and obviously have concerns about that with the number of cases rising and, having different students quarantining and no families have been traveling throughout the holidays. So just be trying to pick up a way to kind of relieve some anxiety about having just more people in the building than what is present right now. Because we all know too, the kids don't live in bubbles; they live with adults, and we have seen that the kids are contracting it as often as adults, but the kids are with the adults. So that has been a big topic of discussion, where you look at the numbers, you separate what the school-age kids are, but school-age kids come with you.
Which, through the chair, which is accurate. And although I agree with what Ms. Hennessy had said earlier about thinking about New Year's being more geared towards the older kids, the bottom line is most of what we're seeing, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Mayor and Mr. Bergeron, is the majority of the contraction of this virus is coming from kids within their family pods. So even though the younger kids might be home with their family for New Year's, if their family has it, the kids have it. So, we know that the teenagers tend to be riskier and are probably not behaving as we would all want them to be, but I don't know that that's really a panacea when it comes to looking at the whole school population.
Any other thoughts?
I guess I'm in agreement that, the longer we wait from the point of greatest contact, if you want to say, New Year's Eve, the 11th seems too soon. I mean, if, we know that most people aren't even showing, people who are tested can still test negative up to 2 weeks after exposure. So, to wait 11 days doesn't even make the 2-week mark. So I guess I would feel more comfortable waiting till the 19th, because then anyone who possibly came in contact and contracted it on New Year's, provided that they are symptomatic, we would know by then. I feel like this is just the hardest set of decisions that we've continually had to make. I mean, we don't have a crystal ball. So yes, I think it's better odds that we'll have less people coming to school after the 19th with it, but who knows? Who knows where the numbers are going to go? Hopefully they'll come down.
I just think there's a lot of variables, and I think you threw a couple in your comments right there that you don't know. You know, the 14 days is unusual. It's 3 to 5 days usually, at least what I've been seeing. And both the health department and the hospital, both looking to give us a recommendation, said they would feel more comfortable giving me their opinions later in the week. I just felt uncomfortable saying, okay, we're going to meet Friday afternoon after their opinion and have people come to school on Monday. We can talk to 5 different doctors and give 5 different answers, and we sure as heck don't know better than they do, but we're just trying to grasp the information we can, keeping in mind the health and welfare of the kids, but also the education of the kids, and that's what we're here for, is the education of the kids, and trying to keep the educators and the kids safe at the same time. And if we waited 4 weeks, I think as far as the virus goes, we're in better shape. As far as the mental health goes, we're in worse shape. So it's we got the double-edged sword going. Tennessee.
Thank you. Through the chair to the superintendent. Question. I know that we had that survey that you had put out asking if people were going to be interested in changing, moving to fully remote, change their status. And forgive me because it's not hitting me right now, but if I remembered, we had only about a shift of, wasn't it like a lower number, say like 20 or so at the elementary area that had changed?
Thank you, Ms. Hennessy. I believe it was in the 30s. So if you look at the overall, it was a very, very low percentage of folks who shifted from hybrid to remote for this semester.
Okay, thank you for the clarity. I appreciate it.
Okay, additional discussion, motion. Ms. Barry, you got a last parting comment?
I guess just in terms of, this is ever changing, and, a decision is made tonight. That doesn't mean that decision has to be put in cement, that if numbers change getting closer to the 19th, then we're all back here again making another decision, because this is just the way it's been going since March. Just the constant changing of decisions and, being flexible and just looking at the way things are. And like you said, Mr. Mayor, you're looking at the safety of the students and the educators. So I guess I wouldn't think at this point you're going to change the pattern that's been happening where you make a decision, but then as things change, so would that decision change?
I don't disagree with that. I'm just trying to do a little bit longer term planning for the parents, because that's why I really made the recommendation I did back in November at this point, to give everyone time to do planning as far as the parents go. And some are working from home, some don't have that flexibility, and that's why we have the daycare set up. But I don't want to do this on a weekly basis and keep flip-flopping on what we're doing. And I'm sure not ready to throw in the towel for the year and say we're going to stay remote, because I don't think it's a good process for the kids. But I understand going one more week, but eventually we got to get kids back together, and not 1 or 2 like they are now, but we're going to get the kids back together. So, other thoughts before we I'll entertain a motion, actually, if anyone has a motion or. Mrs. Matthews.
I'd like to make a motion to extend our return date to hybrid from grades 3 through 12 for a potential return date on January 19th.
Can I just ask for clarification? That's for the students that have been on that
has been on remote, correct.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion?
I'll just make the clarification, that when they return on the 19th, it will start with cohort B.
Okay. I think that's been clear with everyone. They've been a one short, so get those back first. Other discussions? Any additional discussion? With that, I'll call the roll. Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
Mrs. Hennessy.
Yes.
Mr. Caruso.
Yes.
Mr. Gary.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Mrs. Bodenhenger.
Yes.
The chair votes yes. It is unanimous. Thank you all very much. Mr. Gary, thank you very much for your help and input on this. And with that, I'll entertain a motion.
Move to adjourn.
Motion made and seconded to adjourn. I'll call the roll. Mrs. Bodenhenger.
Yes.
Mrs. Matthews.
Yes.
Gary.
Yes.
Mr. Caruso.
Yes.
Mrs. Hennessy.
Yes.
Mrs. Ryan.
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. We are adjourned. Happy New Year and have a safe week.
Thank you.